Hi, I'm Chris White, President of ViaSim Solutions, the makers of PIM blocks. Welcome to the third video in a four-part series on understanding business systems and choosing the right tool for the job. In the first video, we described business systems or processes and determined their levels of complexity. And we even came up with a diagram that has, at the lower left of this diagram, are simple processes or simple systems with few parts and few relations. And at the upper right part of this diagram are high complexity processes with many parts and many relations among those parts. So we did that in the first video. Then in the second video, we layered on top of this diagram three classes of modeling approaches that may be used to represent business processes or systems. The first type was the ad hoc class of models, and they're most appropriate for simple processes. The next class is analytical models, and they're appropriate for medium complexity processes and systems. The third class are operational models, and those are most appropriate for complex processes. Now what we're going to do is dig deeper within each of those classes of models and understand specific tools, techniques, or approaches within each of those classes and how they apply. So we're drawing another diagram, and on the left we have our three classes of models ranging from low fidelity to high fidelity. In other words, the low fidelity systems aren't that realistic, they're not that robust, they don't capture a lot of the actual system or process being modeled, and high fidelity captures more of that. Within the ad hoc class of models, the first type is the best guess. And this is typically just your gut feeling. It's pencil and paper, on the back of a napkin. It's very unstructured, and sometimes you may be looking at similar efforts and saying, oh, well, this is like that one we did 2 years ago, so let's use that as our basis of analysis. Moving up the scale of fidelity, you have spreadsheets. And these are very common, and it adds a little bit of structure to this process, typically a build-up approach. And like I said, it's very common. Spreadsheets are ubiquitous in the workplace. Within the analytical class of models, you have parametric models. And these are your typical statistical models where projections are made based on historical data. So there's data and a line is drawn through that data and projected into the future, and that's what we think is going to happen. Next, we have network models. And these model the activities or tasks being done in a process or system as nodes. And how work or activities move through those nodes depends on the approach being used. And within the project management world, two good examples are critical path method and the PERT method. Within the operational class of models, the first one we have is discrete event simulation. And discrete event simulation captures the details of each activity, and it links activities so you can see some order and how things flow through this process. System dynamics is the highest level of fidelity, and it focuses on the structure of the system and not just the data. Data are important, and data are used to calibrate the model, but they're not the basis for creating that model. And most importantly, system dynamics incorporates feedback loops among these variables. Now, there's always the good and the bad, right? With each approach, there are some benefits and disadvantages. So let's walk through some of those right now. For the best guess, the benefits are that it's fast and easy. But the disadvantage is that because it's fast and easy, they're typically inaccurate because you don't have all the information you need, and so they're very difficult to defend. For a spreadsheet, the benefit is that very little training is required, and they're very easy to understand. Like I said, spreadsheets are very commonplace in the working world, and so everyone is used to seeing these. Disadvantage is that it applies typically to a very specific issue, and you are also reliant on the skills of the person building the spreadsheet as to whether that spreadsheet is good or not. For a parametric model, benefits are that it's well accepted and there are a lot of tools available. You see a lot of statistical analyses being conducted in all sorts of industries, so very, very common and lots of tools available. Disadvantage is that it's very dependent on data, so you need clean data to make sure that these projections are good. And it also assumes that the future will be the same as the past. If data were collected in the past, and that's what we're making these estimates, these trends based on, then the conditions that existed when these data were collected need to be the same as in the future. And so implicitly in the statistical approach, there's an assumption that the future will be the same as the past, which often is not the case at all. For network models, they're great for understanding how all these activities connect and are related to each other, but the disadvantage is that they're often cumbersome when used for high-level problems. For discrete event simulation, it's great for capturing the details of these activities, and it relates cause to effect so you can see this flow of what happens. Unfortunately, discrete event simulation does not capture feedback among these variables very well. It's very, very difficult. It takes a super user to make some of this happen, and in some cases it may actually be impossible. Within system dynamics, benefits are that it captures the feedback loops that are missing in discrete event simulation, and similar to discrete event simulation, relates cause to effect. The disadvantages are that system dynamics is often used just at the aggregate level, and it's not very good for detailed problems. So within the operational class of models, discrete event simulations are often best for very detailed processes where a lot of the details of individual activities or even elements moving through that process need to be known. And system dynamics is best for the higher level strategic planning type processes. Now, referring back to the diagram for system complexity that we had from the first video, again, in the lower left are simple processes, few parts, few relations. And in the upper right are complex processes with many parts and many relations. We can now show that spreadsheets tend to be the best tool to use for simple processes. And at the other end of the spectrum, system dynamics tends to be the best tool or approach to use for complex processes or complex systems. So now we know about process complexity, we know about which tools and techniques can be used to model processes, but finally we know which specific tool or technique to use based on the type of process you're looking at, the type of process you're trying to analyze, to increase your probability of success. Thank you.